The very first night in my husband's family home, I learned the rule: no doors closed at night. His mother, Ruth, said it casually, almost like reminding us to switch off the lights. "We keep everything open after dark," she told me, pausing at the top of the staircase where the narrow hallway branched into bedrooms, bathroom, closets, even the guest room you'll be sleeping in. "The house doesn't like closed doors." I laughed nervously, waiting for her to smile, but she didn't. Her tone was soft, practiced, the way someone recites a prayer. She brushed her fingers along the edge of my bedroom door and added, "Leave it open just a little, and the nights will pass easier." My husband, Daniel, rolled his eyes. "She has these superstitions," he whispered as we carried our bags inside. "Just humor her. It's easier that way." But as soon as he said it, the door behind him drifted on its hinges and stopped, hanging open at a precise angle, as though agreeing. The house was old, older than any place I had ever lived. The staircase groaned with every step, the wallpaper was yellowed with age, and the scent of lemon polish clung to the air like perfume. It wasn't unpleasant, just overwhelming, like stepping into someone else's memory. Our room was at the end of the upstairs hall. The bed had an iron headboard, the dresser was antique oak, and above the door there was one of those narrow transom windows you only see in photographs. It had been wedged open with a folded slip of cardboard. "The air moves better this way," Ruth explained, but her eyes lingered on the window too long, as if it wasn't just about air. When we settled in, I asked Daniel, "Why can't we just close the doors? What difference does it make?" He shrugged, loosening his tie. "It makes Mom feel safe. She says it's an old family tradition. Don't worry about it." But I did worry. That night, as I brushed my teeth in the bathroom, I felt the hallway at my back, every open door like an eye staring into the space. I wanted to shut myself away, just for a moment of privacy. So I did. I closed the bathroom door. Not all the way, just enough for the latch to rest against the frame. The click was quiet, almost delicate. But the moment it happened, the air shifted. The light in the bathroom seemed dimmer. And from the hall came the faintest creak, as though another door had answered mine. I stood frozen with my toothbrush in hand. "You're imagining things," I whispered to myself. When I opened the door again, the hallway looked the same, yet something felt wrong. The guest room door, the one Daniel and I would sleep in, was open wider than before. Not much, just enough to make me shiver. That first night, I couldn't sleep. The grandfather clock downstairs ticked unevenly, sometimes skipping a beat, sometimes doubling one. The house moaned with the weight of old wood. Daniel fell asleep almost immediately, but I lay awake staring at the sliver of hallway visible through our open door. At 2 in the morning, it happened. 3 slow knocks. Not at our door, somewhere farther down the hall. Not loud, not hurried, just a patient rhythm. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. I held my breath. My skin prickled as though the sound had been meant only for me. The knocks came again, this time closer. 3 soft thuds, like knuckles against wood. I gripped Daniel's arm, whispering, "Did you hear that?" He stirred but didn't wake. Then our door moved. Only an inch. Only enough for the hinges to sigh. But I saw it, clear as anything. The door easing itself wider, making room for something I couldn't see. In the morning, I tried to tell Daniel. "Old houses do that," he said, rubbing his eyes. "It's pressure changes, air drafts, the wood expanding. My mom leaves the doors open because it stops them from creaking." But his explanation didn't sit right. Why would open doors stop knocking? Why would they stop moving? At breakfast, Ruth poured me coffee and asked, "Did you sleep well?" I hesitated, then said, "I heard knocking." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "The house was saying hello. You'll get used to it." She said it so simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Mom." But she cut him off. "Just keep the doors open, dear. It's safer that way. The house likes to breathe." I looked at her, then at Daniel, but neither of them gave me the answer I wanted. That afternoon, when no one was watching, I ran my hand along the edge of our door. The wood was scarred, the latch worn smooth, as if it had been opened and closed 1,000 times. At shoulder height, the paint was chipped in a pattern that looked disturbingly like fingernail marks. And that night, when I tried again to close the door, just to see what would happen, the clock downstairs skipped a beat, the transom window rattled softly, and before I even reached the bed, the knocks began again. This time, they were on our door. The second night, I told myself I wouldn't let it get to me. Old houses creak. Pipes groan. Wind finds its way through cracks you can't see. That's all. But the problem with telling yourself something over and over is that a part of you knows it isn't true. I left our bedroom door at the same angle Ruth had shown me, careful not to disturb whatever balance she believed in. Daniel was already asleep, his arm flung across the blanket, his breathing slow. I lay awake, staring at the thin line of hallway light stretching across the floorboards. At first, everything was still. The house groaned once. The grandfather clock downstairs stuttered on its beat, and I almost laughed at how tense I was. But then I heard it again. 3 knocks. Not polite this time. Heavier. More insistent. 1, 2, 3. I froze, every nerve in my body straining toward the sound. It came from the door opposite ours, the closet at the end of the hall. I could picture it clearly. The narrow frame, the hook on the back, the chair with the cardigan draped across it. The knocks came again, slower, like they were testing me. Daniel didn't move. He slept through it, as if the house had chosen not to wake him. But my eyes stayed fixed on the hall, and I swear I saw something. The shadow of the closet door shifting, the line of light beneath it pulsing faintly, like someone pacing inside. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, the hallway was still. Every door hung open at its strange, careful angle. In the morning, Ruth was already in the kitchen, humming softly as she wiped down the counters. The smell of lemon cleaner filled the air so strongly it made my eyes sting. "You heard it, didn't you?" she asked without turning around. I froze. Heard what? She set the rag aside and finally looked at me. Her eyes were calm, almost kind. "The house testing you." My throat tightened. It was knocking. Her smile deepened, though it wasn't unkind. "That's how it says hello. That's how it knows you're listening." I shook my head. "That's insane. Doors don't knock on their own." Ruth picked up the rag again and went back to wiping the counter. "Then don't close them. As long as they stay open, the house has no reason to ask." Her words sat heavy in my chest the rest of the day. That evening I tried to test it. While Daniel showered, I walked the hallway alone. The closet door stood ajar, the pale cardigan still draped neatly across the chair inside. I pushed the door wider, until it almost hit the wall. It creaked, groaned, and then settled. I stepped back, waiting. Nothing happened. Then, slowly, the door eased itself back toward the angle it had been left at, inch by inch, as though pulled by invisible hands, until it rested exactly where it had started. I swallowed hard. "Drafts," I muttered under my breath, but the word didn't sound convincing. That night, I told Daniel what I'd seen. He frowned, shaking his head. "Alina, you're exhausted. Mom's getting into your head. This place, it's just old. It does things." "Doors don't move by themselves," I whispered. "Then we'll oil the hinges," he said, pulling me close. He kissed my hair and added, "Please, stop letting this house scare you." But when he turned off the lamp, I couldn't shake the image of the door swinging slowly shut, then drifting back open as if it had a mind of its own. At 2 in the morning, the knocks returned. 1, 2, 3. This time at our door. The sound reverberated through the wood, soft but deliberate. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would wake Daniel. I sat up, clutching the blanket to my chest. The door eased wider. The strip of light from the hallway stretched further across the floor. And then, clear as a whisper, I heard it. A voice. Not words I could understand, but a low murmur, like someone speaking through the crack of the door. I held my breath, straining to hear. The sound rose and fell like conversation, though only one voice spoke. I glanced at Daniel, still asleep, peaceful, untouched by the noise that filled my skull. When I looked back at the door, I swore I saw a shadow slip past the frame. Not entering, just watching. The whisper stopped. The house went still, and I lay there wide awake, realizing that the rule was never about superstition. It was about survival. By the third night, I was no longer curious. I was angry. The house wasn't just creaking. It was listening. The way the doors eased open, the way the knocking grew bolder, the way Ruth never seemed surprised when I mentioned it, it all made me feel like a guest in a place that wanted more than company. So I decided to test it. After dinner, while Daniel and Ruth argued softly about bills in the kitchen, I walked upstairs alone. The hallway felt heavier than it had any right to, lined with half-open doors that seemed to tilt toward me. Each one breathed faintly, the transoms above them propped like narrow eyes that never blinked. I started with the bathroom door. I pushed it shut, firm and final, until the latch clicked. I stood there, holding my breath. At first, nothing happened. Then the air shifted. The light bulb overhead buzzed and dimmed, as though the house itself had inhaled. When I opened the door again, the hallway seemed to rearrange itself. The guest room door, our door, was open wider than I remembered, the strip of light across the floor brighter, harsher. I closed the closet door next. That was a mistake. The moment the wood touched the frame, a sound rose from inside, like fabric dragging slowly across the floor. A faint thud followed, then another. My stomach twisted. I yanked the door open. The cardigan was gone from the chair. I stepped back so fast I almost tripped. My pulse thundered in my ears. I scanned the hallway, every shadow too deep, every open space too expectant. When I glanced back at the chair, the cardigan was there again, folded neatly, sleeves crossed as if someone had just set it down. My hands shook. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" The house didn't answer. It never did. But I swear the floorboards beneath my feet creaked in a rhythm that sounded like laughter. That night, I couldn't hide my nerves. Daniel noticed, of course. "You're pale," he said as we got ready for bed. "You need sleep. Real sleep." I closed the closet door. I admitted, my voice trembling. His head snapped up. "Alina, don't." "Why not?" I demanded. "Because your mother said so? Because this house has rules no one will explain?" His expression hardened. "Because it upsets her. And the house." I pressed. He opened his mouth, then shut it. For once, he didn't have an answer. At 2 in the morning, the knocking started again. This time it wasn't 3 polite taps. It was steady, relentless, like knuckles hammering the wood. Our door rattled in its frame. Daniel sat up, finally awake, his eyes wide in the dim light. What the hell? The transom window above the door rattled violently, the cardboard wedge slipping loose. A gust of cold air swept across the room, raising goosebumps along my arms. Then came the whisper. Clearer this time. Louder. A woman's voice, hissing words I couldn't make out, but the tone was unmistakable, urgent, insistent, begging. Daniel threw back the covers. "Mom," he shouted, as if she could hear through the walls. But it wasn't Ruth. The voice was right outside the door. I grabbed his arm. "Don't open it." The doorknob turned anyway. Slowly, deliberately, metal grinding against metal. Daniel froze, staring at it. His face had gone white. "Drafts," he whispered, as if clinging to an explanation he no longer believed. The knob kept turning. I clutched his hand, whispering, "It's testing us. It wants us to close it out, or let it in." The knocking stopped. The silence was worse. Then, softly, the door eased open on its own. The strip of hallway light fattened into a rectangle. And in that light, just for a second, I saw a shadow move. Not Daniel's. Not mine. Something tall, thin, and utterly still. I blinked and it was gone. In the morning, Ruth didn't ask how he slept. She didn't have to. She poured me coffee and said, "You closed the door, didn't you?" I stared at her, too tired to deny it. "What happens if I do?" Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, then back to me. "The house gets lonely. And when it's lonely, it remembers." "Remembers what?" I pressed. Her smile was small, patient, unbearable. "Who it's lost." That afternoon, I decided I couldn't live like this. I told Daniel I wanted to leave. "For how long?" he asked. "Forever." His jaw clenched. "It's just a house, Alina." "Then close the door tonight." I snapped. "Just once. Prove it's nothing." He didn't answer. That night, he tried. He stood at the door, hand on the knob, and pushed it shut. The latch clicked. The moment it did, every other door in the hallway slammed at once. Bam, bam, bam. The sound echoed through the house, violent, furious. The grandfather clock downstairs skipped 3 beats, then stopped altogether. The air turned ice cold. Our breath misted in front of us. Then came the knocking. Not at our door this time, but at all of them. Every door in the hallway thudded with fists, pounding in perfect unison. Daniel grabbed my hand. His voice shook. "We're leaving. Tomorrow." But the house had heard him, because when I looked back at the door, it was already open again. Wide open. Waiting. The morning after the door slammed was worse than the night itself. The house was silent. Too silent. Even the grandfather clock hadn't resumed ticking. Its hands stood frozen at 2:17, the exact time the pounding had started. I walked the hallway in daylight, but it didn't comfort me. The doors all stood wide open now, every single one. The closet, the bathroom, the study, all of them gaping like mouths. The transoms above each door gleamed with thin winter light, and for the first time, I noticed something etched into the wood around them. Not carvings exactly, more like scratches, tiny arcs and circles worn into the grain over decades. "Do you see this?" I whispered to Daniel. He didn't answer. He just stared at the marks, his jaw tight. "It's nothing," but we both knew it wasn't. Ruth seemed brighter at breakfast, humming to herself as she buttered toast. She looked at me with that polite, maddening smile. "The house doesn't like being shut out," she said softly. "It will forgive you, but you mustn't test it again." Daniel slammed his coffee mug onto the table. "Enough, Mom. Stop talking about the house like it's a person." Her gaze didn't waver. "You know better than that, Daniel." I stared between them, my stomach sinking. "You knew this would happen," I said to her. "I warned you," she replied, her voice almost gentle. "You chose not to listen." That afternoon, I tried to convince Daniel to leave. "Please," I begged. "We don't owe this place anything. We can go tonight. We can stay at a motel." He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "If we run, it'll just follow. You don't understand how she is." "She?" I asked. "The house," he whispered, like saying it louder might summon it. That night, I decided I couldn't play by its rules anymore. I gathered my things quietly while Daniel showered. My plan was simple. Leave the house, even just for a few hours, breathe air that didn't smell like lemon polish and secrets. I crept into the hallway with my bag slung over my shoulder. The doors watched me. That was the only way to describe it. Open at their careful angles, they leaned toward me, waiting. I walked faster. Halfway down the hall, the closet door swung shut on its own. Hard. The bang echoed through the house. I froze. My bag slipped from my hand. From inside the closet came the sound of breathing. Slow, steady, unmistakably human. I reached for the knob with trembling fingers, but before I touched it, the door opened again. Only an inch, just enough for the smell to escape. Not mothballs, not dust. Something sour, metallic. Something that had been kept too long. I stumbled back, shaking. The bedroom door behind me slammed shut. Then the bathroom. Then the study. One by one, every door in the hallway closed with a violence that rattled the frames. Only the front door remained open. At the far end of the hall, I saw it yawning wide, pale light spilling across the floor like a path. For a moment, hope surged in me. I ran toward it, my shoes striking the wood too loud, echoing off the walls. But as I reached it, the air shifted. The door slammed in my face. I screamed, pounding my fists against it. The knob didn't budge. My breath fogged against the wood. Behind me, the house exhaled a long, cold breath through every transom window at once. The hallway darkened. I turned slowly. Every other door was open again, wide open. And in each doorway, I swore I saw a shadow standing just beyond the threshold. Not people exactly, but outlines, tall and silent, waiting. I backed away until my shoulders pressed against the front door. "Daniel!" I screamed. He appeared at the top of the stairs, hair damp, towel around his neck. His face went pale when he saw the hallway. "Alina," he whispered, his voice breaking. The shadows didn't move. They didn't need to. The open door spoke for them. The house wasn't testing me anymore. It was choosing. That night, I refused to sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed with the lamp on, my eyes fixed on the door. Daniel tried to talk me down, but I barely heard him. The walls hummed softly, like a distant vibration. The clock downstairs had not ticked once since 2:17. I kept thinking of Ruth's words. Asterisk, the house keeps what we give it. Asterisk. And I realized, with cold certainty, that if I stayed here much longer, I wouldn't be myself anymore. I would be another shadow in one of those doorways. Another secret the house collected. By the fifth night, I was done pretending. The house didn't want us as guests. It wanted us as part of itself. Every creak, every breath of cold air through the transoms, every door slamming shut or easing open, it was all deliberate. I couldn't deny it anymore. I told Daniel I was leaving. "We can't," he said flatly. His hands gripped the edge of the dresser so tightly his knuckles turned white. "We can't," I snapped. "There's nothing keeping us here but your mother's stories." He shook his head. "It's not just stories. You felt it too. If we run, it'll follow." I stared at him in disbelief. "Do you hear yourself?" It's a house, Daniel. Wood, plaster, nails. His eyes darted to the door as if the house were listening. Don't say that. Not here. That evening Ruth came into our room without knocking. She leaned against the doorframe, smiling in that calm, maddening way. You should stop fighting it, she said softly. The house has rules for a reason. I stood up, shaking with anger. What does it want from me? Why me? Her eyes were pitying. The house remembers. It keeps what fits. And you? Her gaze drifted over me like an appraisal. You fit. Daniel stepped between us. Mom, enough. But Ruth only shrugged and said, the house has already chosen. You'll see. Then she left, pulling the door to just slightly. Not closed, never closed, but enough that I felt the air shiver in her wake. That night I packed a bag. Just the essentials. My phone, wallet, a sweater. I waited until Daniel was asleep, his face slack with exhaustion. The clock downstairs hadn't ticked in days. The silence pressed on me like a weight. I opened our bedroom door carefully, quietly. The hallway stretched out before me, lined with open doors. Every one gaped wide now, wider than before, like mouths stretched in hunger. I walked quickly, clutching my bag. The front door was visible at the end of the staircase, its brass knob catching the faint moonlight. I reached the top step and froze. Every door upstairs slammed shut at once. Bam, bam, bam. The sound thundered through the house. My ears rang with it. My heart lurched into my throat. And then, just as suddenly, every door creaked open again, slowly, carefully, as if dozens of unseen hands had pulled them wide in unison. The air smelled of dust and metal. The transom windows rattled, their inch of open space trembling. I ran. The front door was already ajar, pale night spilling in. I sprinted down the stairs, bag bouncing against my hip. My breath came in ragged gasps. But when I reached the door and grabbed the knob, the wood groaned beneath my hand. The door slammed shut. I screamed, twisting the knob, yanking with all my strength. It didn't move. Behind me, the staircase groaned as if something heavy were descending step by step. I turned. The hallway above was filled with shadows. Not people, not exactly, but shapes. Tall, thin, indistinct. They filled every doorway, watching. One by one, they began to knock. 3 slow knocks. In perfect unison. The sound echoed through the house like a heartbeat. Daniel rushed down the stairs, eyes wide with terror. Alina, he shouted. Help me open it. I screamed, pulling at the door. He tried, straining beside me, but the knob wouldn't turn. The wood felt alive under my palms, vibrating like muscle. Then Ruth's voice floated from the top of the stairs. Calm, patient. Stop fighting. It's no use. We both looked up. She stood there in her nightgown, framed by the shadows. Her eyes were calm, her hands folded. The house wants her, she said. Not you, Daniel. You can stay, but she belongs here now. Daniel shook his head violently. No, she's my wife. Ruth's smile deepened. The house doesn't care about marriage. It cares about fit. The knocking grew louder. Faster. The door behind me rattled against its frame as if 100 fists pounded it at once. I screamed, Daniel, we have to try again. Together we yanked. Pulled. The knob tore at our skin, the wood groaned, the hinges screamed. And then, suddenly, it gave. The door burst open. Cold night air rushed in like salvation. I stumbled out onto the porch, dragging Daniel with me. My bag slipped from my shoulder and tumbled into the yard. Behind us, the door slammed shut with a force that shook the house. We ran, barefoot across the grass, through the dark, past the old oak tree at the edge of the property. We didn't stop until we reached the road. Only then did I look back. The house stood silent, every window dark except one, the transom above our bedroom door. It glowed faintly, pale and watchful. And in that glow, just for an instant, I saw myself. Not as I was, but as the house wanted me, standing in the doorway, hands folded neatly, cardigan buttoned to the throat, eyes blank and waiting. The image faded, but the cold stayed in my chest. Daniel pulled me into his arms, trembling. We're free, he whispered. But I wasn't so sure, because when I opened my hand, I realized I was still clutching something. A sliver of wood, sharp and splintered, pressed into my palm. The edge of a door. I hadn't picked it up. And when I dropped it onto the road, I swore I heard it knock 3 times before it hit the asphalt. 1, 2. 3. The sound echoed in my ears as I whispered the question I'll never stop asking. If the house has already chosen me, how far can I really run?